All right, welcome to the deep dive. You're here, we're here because we all want to, get a little smarter. And today we're going to try to do that by taking a deep dive, as the name suggests, into a source that you all recommended to us, a book by Seth Godin called The Big Red Fez.
That's right.
And it's all about websites, which of course everybody has or interacts with on a, daily basis. So the mission here, I guess, or at least as I see it, is to try to distill this book down to, some core actionable insights that everybody can use to make any website better right now.
Yes. The Big Red Fez, even though it came out a while ago, really is full of timeless principles that are rooted in direct marketing. And I've read through it as well, and I think that we can
Yeah.
definitely extract some valuable insights that apply across the board.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that struck me about this book was that it's not like the most modern book, but it's like the fundamentals that he's talking about are all still there, and they really matter. So, one of the first things I wanted to bring up that I thought was really interesting was this idea. I think he talked about it right in the beginning, which was sort of the two different realities of the internet, or
Yeah.
like the two versions of the internet. And I was wondering if you could just sort of recap that for us.
Absolutely. So what Godin says is that there are two different perspectives on what the online experience should be like. On the one hand, you have the engineer's perspective,
Right.
which sort of idealizes this user who is perfectly informed, have all the data in the world, and makes rational, considered decisions.
Yeah.
And I think what he's getting at there is this tends to lead to websites that are over-organized, over-categorized,
Super, super complicated.
super complicated.
Like tons of menus and submenus and yeah, like an
Right.
engineer designed this.
Exactly. And they thought about, from the database perspective, how to best structure it. So it works well, in terms of, having good back end or whatever.
Yeah, and like the relationships between the different pages and the
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how that, might be logically organized, but it completely forgets about the actual user.
Right. And then he contrasts that with the marketer's perspective, which is like what he's, really coming from.
Yeah.
Which is, what I think most of us would relate to more, which is that people are busy.
Right.
They're not necessarily well informed when they come to your website.
Yeah.
And you've only got, a few seconds to really make an impression on them.
That's right.
And to get them to do what you want them to do.
Exactly. They're impatient. They're,
Yeah, exactly.
they want to click on something now, and if it's not clear, they're going to leave. And so what's interesting is that the data bears this out.
Right.
You can see the analytics, you can see how people are behaving, and so much of that early web development and the early investment in a lot of those web companies, they were banking on this engineer's perspective, and you saw a lot of failures because they were just not meeting the user where they were at.
Right. Yeah, it's like, assuming that everybody's going to be, reading the fine print, reading the terms and conditions and stuff when really
Yeah.
they just want to click the button and buy the thing. Or,
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they can't find it, they're going to move on.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really great way to sort of set the stage. And then he went on to this analogy, which is the monkey with a big red fez theory
Right.
of website business. And I was wondering if you could just sort of explain that for us a little bit.
Absolutely. So the idea here is that you have to think of your website as if a monkey, wearing a big red fez came onto your website. Now, what is that monkey looking for? He's looking for one thing, and that's the banana. And your job is to make it absolutely clear where that banana is and what it is.
Right. Yeah. And make it as obvious and as easy as possible to see that banana and to grab that banana.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's really that's the metaphor he uses throughout the book is like, what is the banana on this page?
Right.
How clear is it? How obvious is it? If you had to describe, what's the one thing you want someone to do on this page, what would it be? That's the banana.
Yeah. And I thought that was really brilliant because it really brings it down to earth, and it makes it really clear that you gotta think about like what's the value proposition here, you know? What am I giving to the person that's coming to this website, and how do I make that as clear as possible? And so along with the monkey and banana theory, he also talks about the pachinko machine
That's right.
analogy. And I thought that was also very interesting. Could you explain that one?
Absolutely. So what he's saying is that you should view your website like a pachinko machine, right?
Yeah.
And the traffic that comes to your website, think of those as like the balls that you're dropping into the top of the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And your job is to design that machine, right? So that as many of those balls as possible, right, end up where you want them to go, whether that's a sale, a sign up, whatever.
Right. Yeah. So it's like the pachinko machine is the website.
Yes.
And the balls are the visitors.
Yes. And the goal, the ultimate goal is to get as many of those, to make it through and to get that payout at the end.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about the pachinko analogy that I really appreciated was that he was very realistic about it.
Absolutely.
He was like, not every ball's gonna make it.
Yes, right.
Right? Like, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna have some balls that just, go straight down the middle and out.
Right.
And then you're gonna have some that bounce around a lot and maybe get pretty close.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have some that actually, win.
And the other thing about it is the balls, the further they get down,
right,
the more valuable they become.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So the ones that are just coming in at the top, those are the ones that are just hitting your site for the first time. They may not convert, but as they go through your funnel,
right,
they become more and more valuable.
Yeah, they're getting closer and closer to the end goal, and so
Sure.
you want to make sure that you're not losing them along the way.
Exactly.
And so that's, I think, a really good sort of overarching principle to think about. When designing your website. And then he goes on to give all these specific principles for how to actually do this. And I think, I've got a list of some of them here. Maybe we can just go through, some of the more important ones or some of the more interesting ones and just sort of chat about those a little bit. That sound good?
Absolutely.
All right. So the first one here is, and he calls this like a rule. The first rule of the banana is that each page should have one primary objective.
Yes, that's right.
And, this is kind of like the monkey with a big red fez, like what's the banana on this page?
Right.
Like, and so you want to make it big, you want to make it obvious, and you want to fight the urge to try to be all things to all people.
Exactly. You have to pick a banana, and if you don't pick one, then your visitor's not going to pick one either.
Right. Yeah. And he gives this really interesting example of the Hussey Seating Company.
Yeah.
Where they had this website, and it was fine. It was a perfectly fine website. But when you first got to it, you had to like choose your browser, your browser requirements,
and you had to choose your language.
Yeah.
And it was just like so much stuff.
Right. Yeah. What's the point of this? Like, how does this help me? You know?
It was just like so much stuff to wade through before you could even get to the seating.
Exactly.
Which is the whole point of the website,
Right.
So, that's a great example of what not to do.
Absolutely. And it's a good illustration of that engineer's mindset because, they were thinking, okay, we need to make sure that everyone can see this website correctly. So we need to, make sure they have the right browser and, all that kind of stuff. But from a user's perspective, they don't care about any of that.
Right. Exactly. They just want to see the seating.
They want to see the seats. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And find out, how to, purchase them or, whatever it is they need to do. Yeah. So that leads into the next principle that I thought was really interesting, which was nobody cares about you as much as you do.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's so true.
Absolutely.
Like you're so passionate about your business and what you do, but the average visitor to your website doesn't necessarily share that passion.
That's right. And as business owners and people who work on our websites, we spend so much time thinking about them. And we forget that, the average visitor, this is their first time on the site.
Right.
They don't know anything about us and they don't really care.
Right. They're just there to find something.
Yeah, to solve their problem.
Yeah, to solve their problem. Yeah, exactly.
They're not there to, hear about our history or our mission statement or all that kind of stuff. They just want to know, what can you do for me?
Yeah, yeah. And he has this really funny analogy where he's talking about, like, imagine if the Gap had somebody at the front door, like before you could even walk into the Gap, they stopped you and they were like, do you have a wallet?
Do you have a belt?
Do you have a belt?
Do you have shoes on?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Like that's so weird.
Exactly.
Right. But it's the same thing as like, making people jump through all these hoops, before they can actually, get to the good stuff. And he has this really great example of inside.com,
Yeah.
which was, a website that had like a lot of different things going on.
Yeah.
And it was kind of unclear like what the main thing was.
Too many headlines. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just too much, and so people were just kind of like, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah. I'm overwhelmed. I'm out of here.
Yeah. I'm out of here. Yeah, exactly. So, so that leads into, the next principle, which is, the best way to get what you want is to make the banana the most obvious thing on the page.
That's right.
So this is kind of like the opposite of the previous principle, right? Like, don't be afraid to really like shove the banana in people's faces.
Yeah, make it clear what you want them to do.
Yeah, exactly.
What action you want them to take.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you don't make it clear, they're not going to do it.
Right, and he gives this really interesting example of LifeMinders.
Yeah.
Which was, a service that sent you reminders.
Right.
And they had this, pretty good service, I guess, but their sign-up form was just like so generic.
Right.
Right? Like it was just like, here's a sign-up form for everybody.
Right. For everybody.
And he's like, no.
Yeah.
Like you need to have different sign-up forms for different people. Like if somebody's already a subscriber, send them to a page that's like, hey, you're already a subscriber. Here are some other things you can do.
Right. Or here are some, other benefits you might not be aware of,
Yeah, exactly.
Or, if it's a first-time visitor, have a different page. It's like, hey, welcome.
Yeah, right.
Here's what we do. Here's why you should sign up.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was a really, really, really interesting principle. And then he goes on to talk about, making things easy.
Yeah.
And he has this principle that he calls, don't make it easy for you, make it easy for me.
That's right.
Which I think is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Engineers, they often, prefer certain solutions because they're easy to implement on the back end, or, they're more elegant from a coding perspective. But
right.
Your job is not to make it easy for you. It's to make it easy for the user.
Right. And he has this really funny example about states, like choosing your state.
Well, on a form.
Yeah, those drop-down menus.
Yeah, those drop-down menus. And it's like, you've got 50 states or however many states there are. And it's like, you got to scroll through the whole list to find your state.
Even if you live in, Alabama.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is at the top. You still got to scroll through.
Yeah, and he's like, no, just let people type in.
Yeah, the abbreviation.
Like CA or NY or,
Or even just start typing. And it'll autocomplete.
Yeah, exactly. Make it easy.
Exactly.
Like don't make people jump through hoops.
Right.
And then, he also talks about not asking for too much information up front.
Yeah.
And he has this principle, one step at a time.
That's right.
And he uses LifeMinders again as an example.
Yeah.
And he's like, why are you asking people for their gender and their email type?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like, why?
Yeah. All you need is their email address. Yeah. Just get the email address.
Yeah. And then you can build a relationship.
Right. And then you can get more information later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you've earned their trust.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So those are, I think, some really good principles to keep in mind. And then he goes on to talk about, like, when things go wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Like when people can't find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And he has this principle, hi, can I help you?
That's right.
And it's basically, treat a failed search
Yeah.
As an opportunity?
As opportunity, yeah.
Right. Like, don't just say, sorry, no match is found.
Exactly. Don't give them a dead end.
Right. Yeah. Give them something.
Yeah.
Right. And he talks about, like, if you're in a store and you ask for something and they don't have it, a good salesperson isn't just going to say, sorry, we don't have that.
Yeah, go away.
Go away.
We can't help you.
They're going to be like, oh, well, we don't have that in that size, but we have it in this size. Or, we have this other thing that's similar.
Right. Or maybe you'd be interested in this instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing online, right? Like if somebody searches for something and you don't have it, give them some other options.
Exactly. Give them something that's close or that's, that might be relevant.
Yeah. Or, even just like show them like the most popular searches or, something, anything.
Something to keep them on the site.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Keep them engaged.
Exactly.
And then he talks about, making it really clear how to buy something.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're selling something online,
Make it obvious how to purchase
they
it.
make it obvious how to buy.
Yeah.
And he has this crazy story about the speaker company called Audio.uk.
Yeah.
And it was like, these speakers looked amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like a high-end speaker company.
Yeah. But it was like really hard to figure out how to buy them.
It was like buried on the site.
Yeah, and he was like, going through all these pages and clicking on all these buttons.
Yeah.
And finally found a view basket button, and then he clicked on that, and it took him to an under construction page.
Yeah.
What?
Like, why? Yeah.
Like, these speakers look amazing. I want to buy them, but I can't figure out how.
Right. You're making it so difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, along with that, he talks about error pages, right? Like having good error pages.
Yeah.
And he has this really interesting observation, which is that at one point,
Yeah.
the GeoCities error page was like one of the most viewed pages
Yeah, on the internet. Yeah.
Because it was just like so common.
My people were getting errors.
Right. Like it was just like people were constantly getting error messages, and so he's like, that's an opportunity.
It's exactly.
Right. Like that's a chance to engage with people.
To help them.
Yeah. To help them to give them something.
Yeah.
Instead of just like a blank page that says error.
Exactly.
So yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting. And then he talks about not asking for the same information twice.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you've already got somebody's information, don't ask them for it again.
Yeah. Don't make them fill out the same form.
Yeah. And he praises Amazon for this.
Yeah.
He's like, Amazon's really good at this.
Yeah. They remember your information.
Yeah, they remember your information.
And they pre-fill forms for you.
Yeah. And he's like, it's such a small thing, but it makes such a big difference.
Yeah. It makes you feel like they value your time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why would you make somebody type in their email address again?
Right. They've already given it to you.
Yeah, they've already given it to you,
Yeah.
Like, why? So, yeah, that's a good one. And then, he talks about metaphors and how metaphors can actually be harmful.
Yeah. The enemy of progress.
Yeah, the enemy of progress.
He says.
And I thought that was really interesting because, we often think of metaphors as being like helpful, right? Like they help us understand things.
Right.
But he's saying that, when it comes to websites,
Yeah.
you really got to be careful with metaphors.
Yeah, because they can be misleading.
Right, because they can be misleading. And he gives this funny example of a website where you had to like click on the house to like see your neighbors.
Right, to see what your neighbors were up to. Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah, it's like, why?
Like, why the house?
Yeah, it's a confusing metaphor.
Yeah, it's a confusing metaphor, and it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah. And it's not intuitive.
Yeah, it's not intuitive at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good one to keep in mind. And then he talks about testing, like actually testing your website.
That's right.
And he says, you can't test everything.
Right.
Which is true.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't test every single page, every single button, every single link.
Yeah.
But you can test the most important paths.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the money path, as he calls it.
The money path. Yeah.
Like the path that people take to actually buy something.
Right. The path to conversion.
Yeah, exactly. And he has this really scary story about a website that he built.
Yeah.
Where the orders just stopped coming in.
Yeah, they stopped processing.
Yeah, they stopped processing. And
Yeah.
he's like, what's going on,
Yeah.
And it turned out that, like, one of the engineers had, like, accidentally overwritten a file.
Yeah.
And it just, like, broke the whole ordering system.
Yeah, it was like a tiny little mistake.
Yeah.
But it had huge consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, testing is important.
Absolutely.
And then he talks about, automating things.
Yeah.
Like making things as easy as possible for the user.
Right. Don't make them do unnecessary work.
Yeah, and he has this principle, if the computer's so smart, why am I doing all the work?
That's right.
Which I think is so true.
It is, yeah.
Right? Like we have these incredibly powerful computers,
Yeah.
but we're still making people like fill out these long forms.
Yeah, jump through hoops.
Yeah, and he has this example of Epson,
Yeah.
where you'd put in your shipping address and then it would ask you for your billing address.
Right, separately.
Yeah, separately.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't even give you the option to like say that they were the same. So you had to like type in the same address twice.
Yeah, it's like, come on.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
Why are you making me do
The
this?
computer can figure that out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like the computer should be able to like tell if the addresses are the same and just like autofill it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, at least give me a checkbox that says billing address is the same as shipping address.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good one. And then he also talks about outsourcing and how outsourcing can actually be a problem.
Yeah, you have to be careful.
Yeah, you got to be careful what you outsource.
Yeah.
And he has this really frustrating story about Corbis.
Yeah.
Which is a stock photo company.
Photo licensing company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had outsourced their billing to this company called QPass.
Right.
And he was trying to like buy some photos and he got this error message saying that his account was inactive.
Yeah.
And so he clicked on the link to like find out why his account was inactive.
Right.
And it just took him to the generic sign-in page. And
Right.
it's just like, what?
That's not helpful.
Like why would you do that?
Like, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's a good one to keep in mind. And then he talks about keeping your promises.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you say you're going to do something on your website, do it.
Yeah, don't overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah, and he uses Corbis again as an example.
Yeah.
And he's like, they said that they were going to tell me why my account was inactive and then they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't deliver.
Yeah, they didn't deliver.
Right.
And he's like, that's just bad form.
It's bad for your brand.
Yeah, exactly.
It erodes trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he talks about the checkout process and how the checkout process should be like as simple as possible.
Right, as smooth as possible.
Yeah. And he uses drugstore.com as an example where, he was trying to buy something and he got to the checkout and then it was like, choose your server.
Yeah, it was like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it was like, what? Like, why do I have to choose a server?
I don't know. I just want to buy my stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, that's just confusing, Like, why are you making